Hi. Hey, beautiful, humid, fabulous saints of God out here in the hot wilderness trying to do the right thing. Somebody say amen. Amen. I'm Jacqui Lewis. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I have the deep joy of being the senior minister at Middle Church in New York City, where we are the multi-everything Rainbow Coalition, movement of love and justice, trying to heal souls and the world with fierce love. Woo! And I sit on this stage with some of the smartest colleagues I have in the business. They are writing the good right, they are fighting the good fight, and all four of us understand that there is a thing, a worldview, an ideology called white Christian nationalism. Say it with me. It does not belong to all the white Christians, but it is happening in the world, and some of the people in it are black and Hispanic and indigenous. Somebody say, boo! So we're going to have a panel, which really means a structured conversation, where we're going to hear from these amazing leaders about, one, what is white Christian nationalism from their place in the foxhole, I'm going to say, from the work that they're doing. How do they define it? That's kind of round one, okay? Number two, we're going to go back through them and talk about what you can do from where you sit in the world. We are all of us preachers, teachers, writers. That's why we're here, right? Musicians. But I want you to leave with one thing you can do, okay? And if you're very nice to us at the end, we'll give you a chance to ask one question of each of them. That's only because we only have 50 minutes, okay, as in 50. So I'm going to try to look in the audience and pick up some diversity so we can get some questions. Does that sound like a plan? Are you ready to go? Are you sure? Make some noise! First, we're going to hear from David Gushee. David.
So, hello? Yeah. So the question was, what is white Christian nationalism, and why is it a threat? I would say, in my book, I prefer the language of authoritarian, reactionary Christianity. So essentially, it is a movement of reactionary, mainly white Christians who are reacting negatively to pretty much every social change that has happened in our country since 1960, and have been activated towards a more, some of them at least, towards an authoritarian political response in which if they cannot win their political goals through the democratic process, they're prepared to step outside the democratic process. And Donald Trump has given permission and a map for how to do that. I have this book in my hand that I wanted to share with you. It's a big old scholarly book, but it's called Illiberal America by Stephen Hahn. And one of the things that he says is the time horizon of authoritarian, reactionary, white Christianity goes back to the very beginning of our country. It's not just since the 60s. So there is an illiberal America competing with our liberal democratic America from before the founding of this country and working its way all through our country. So we're participating in the latest iteration of a struggle that's about 400 years old. What is the threat to Christianity is essentially what you have is an ethno-tribal nationalism baptized in Christianity. That is called idolatry, and it's a violation of the first commandment. And it's just really bad religion. The threat to democracy is some of these folks believe that their cause is so holy that democracy can be left by the side of the road if winning requires it. So in that sense, this movement, whatever we call it, is a threat both to Christianity and to American democracy.
Woo! David. Thank you, David. And next we have Obery Hendricks.
Well, Christian nationalism. Well, there are a lot of ways to define it, and my dear colleague, David Gushee, did a really good job with it. But we know Christian nationalism says that Christian nationalism says that this is a Christian nation, right? And so that it should be governed by the dictates precepts of Christianity. The problem is, the question is, whose precepts? And they're the precepts of a liberal America, but in this most current iteration of Christian nationalism, I date this current one to the 80s, with real roots in rancid soil of racism. Mm-hmm. And that is when, during the Carter administration, there was Green v. Connolly that said that, educational institutions that practice racial segregation as a policy were not eligible for tax relief, or for federal funding. And what happened is that Jerry Falwell and those guys who closed the schools for 5 years in Farmville, Virginia, where I was born, rather than desegregate them, they raised hell and in support of Bob Jones University, a very racist institution. You couldn't be more racist than Bob Jones University. Said that they should have a right to discriminate against whomever they want, and they use this as a cause célèbre to try to work people up to support their backward anti-Christian view. So what I'm saying is, Christian nationalism has, in its most recent iteration, has its roots in racism. It is a racist, hateful movement. Also, it is anti-Christian, because it's not about loving your neighbor. It's about marginalizing and maybe even destroying your neighbor if they don't believe what you believe. This is not a Christian country. It has never been a Christian country officially, nor is it a Christian country in the de facto terms. So Christian nationalism is anti-Christian. One might say that those who practice Christian nationalism are in league with an antichrist. That's what I call the orange-haired demon. And it's something that we must stand against, because Christian nationalism, the threat of it is that it would destroy anybody who disagrees with it. Doesn't matter whether you're white or black, though black folks, will get it worse. Gay folks will get it worse. But those of us who aren't black, who aren't gay, well, you might end up having some gay grandkids or gay children or something. It's going to touch you. So the threat is that it's deadly. It'll have deadly consequences in one way or another, and because of that, we must fight that threat with all of our strength and all of our being and all of our faith.
Thank you, Obery. Woo! We'll hear from Jim Wallis now. Jim.
Can you hear me?
Not really.
Okay. Yeah? A little louder?
Give me just a second.
No, I'm hearing no.
That's better.
More.
Yeah? More?
Yeah, there we go.
Better. Okay. I'm glad Jacqui convened us with a preacher's voice this morning, because we need to end this with an altar call.
Yeah,
I'm very serious about that. So, my panelists know this topic well, and I know many of you know this topic well, too. Question is, what does it mean right now, and how do we respond? Since Wild Goose is a festival of faith and all the rest, I'm going to talk about this, first of all, spiritually. I have never in my life felt evil encroaching upon an election like I do right now. This isn't just a perfect storm politically of a whole lot of bad things, which we're watching every day in the news. It's deeper than a political perfect storm. Evil is encroaching on this election in so many ways. Why is that? Because, as my panelists have said, this goes back to before the founding of this country. Donald Trump did not create this. He is the master of grievance. And I'll say every nation has its better angels and worse demons. And Donald Trump is the master of our demons as well. He's mobilizing our demons. So we have to approach this spiritually. I'm all for political strategy, But finally, underneath this, we have to and why is it resurging now? Because this papal bull supported the destruction of indigenous people. Papal bulls, overtly. Dominionist theology is not new. It's very old. The nation was established with a racial hierarchy. Everything all comes from that. And it's because we are closer now to a genuine multiracial democracy because of that, and we would be the first in the world to do it. Because of that, white supremacy is making this their final battle. That's what this is. The final battle for whiteness, white supremacy, white domination. That's what we're up against right now. And we are in, I'll just say it, a Bonhoeffer moment. The German church was taken over politically by authoritarian political forces. They submitted their theology to fascism. That's what's happening now. And a young German theologian who went to Abyssinian Baptist Church every Sunday while he was at Union Seminary, and whose confessing church was shaped decisively by black liturgy, music, and preaching. He called for a confessing church. And even if we survive this election, which I'm not sure we will politically, we need nothing less than a new American church in this country. A whole new American church in this country. And that can express itself now, as someone once says, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
So how do we take this crisis and turn it into effective resistance? That's round two of your question.
Yep.
We'll talk about that, but also looking toward the beginnings of a new American church in this country, which is where we finally have to go with the ending of dominionist theology.
Woo. Excellent, Jim. And we're going to come right back to Jim as we think about what we can do about it. I just want to pick up a couple of things that everyone said. One, I was so glad that David said, this is how I talk about it. David sits in a particular place, in a particular context, in a particular worldview, who's finding language to describe this ideology in ways that people can hear in his context, and I'm really glad about that. Obery and I are in a group of scholar activists together, and we've been workshopping language about this for a couple of years now. When Obery goes right at white Christian nationalism, that's what I say also, because it to me describes what we're seeing right now, but also roots itself in the whiteness that Jim and Obery and I are talking about, white supremacy. So we can call it Christian nationalism, and it's kind of missing that racial orientation, which is there. I want to quickly say, as I turn back to Jim, I want us to remember that you are in a particular context and are in particular places. And what's important to me isn't how you say it, but that you say it. It matters to me, right? That you find ways to say to your cousins, your aunties, your congregants, your friends at the block party, at the PTA, there's something happening that's masquerading as Christian, and it's not. What it is an ideology to this white supremacist. It is not new, and it rears its ugly head every time things are tense like this. When whiteness feels threatened, when the economy feels threatened, when the country looks like it's going to brown up too much and people are going to feel left behind, this is what has happened. It happened after emancipation with the rising of the Klan, which was a Protestant white supremacist dance. When you go to church and then you go lynch people, that's not Christian. Say, that's not Christian. It happened after the civil rights or the Southern Freedom Movement made progress on human rights. It happened. And it's happening now because it is clear that in 2050, this nation is not going to look like it looked in the good old white days. So I want to point you to resource. Go to the Yale Center of Public Policy. Is that it? Yeah, Yale Center of Public Policy and Public Theology. Even look up PBS white supremacy. Read about it. Find out about it. Go to Project 2025 and read about it. Friends, find your own voice to talk about this thing, to define this thing. That was the panelists. Define it and its threat. So you feel comfortable that you can describe it and define its threat in your context. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to turn back to Jim now and say, what can we, ordinary, extraordinary folks, do about it? Jim?
Jacqui laying out the history like she just did, we have to understand that history right now. We have to understand the history that we are in right now. And there are, let me just start with, I was on the phone this morning. I'm working with my dear friend Barbara Williams Skinner on FACE, United to Save Democracy. We talk most every day. But I want to start with what you said this morning. She said, we need to pray without ceasing. Now, Barbara is really a prayer warrior. She really is. And prayer is at the center of everything that we're doing because of what we're facing, the elephant in the room, as you said, Jacqui. In every legislative, policy, political conversation in Washington, D.C. and around the country is by 2050, we will no longer be a white majority nation, as you said. That's it. That's the foundation of all of this. That's why the old papal bulls are coming back. Dominionist theology is coming back. So how do we fight that? Because this is, and I told a quick story yesterday, but it bears repeating here. I was at the Justice Department for their celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Movement, just on Tuesday. Normally, that would be a time of how far have we come? How far do we need to go? Let's have the debate. That was not the ethos in the Great Hall of the Robert Kennedy Building, Department of Justice. It was all of these 60 years are literally about to be virtually repealed. These 60 years. And it's in the Project 2050. They want to repeal the last 60 years to win their election. So I'm going to say 3 venues are important. One is, I mentioned briefly, we are on the ground in all the battleground states at the most perilous polling places, strategically at the polling places in low-income, people of color neighborhoods, which are most at risk for voter suppression, intimidation, and subversion. We're having training sessions for poll chaplains, Barbara and I and Adam Taylor, for six of them between now and the election, all over the country. So that's practical. We'll train you in how to deal with violence at polling places, how to make sure information is clear, how to make sure wheelchairs are there, how to make sure the process is effective, fair, and functioning. We're talking to secretaries of state in all those states, and we have now the presence of faith-based collars alongside the lawyers. I call it lawyers and collars. We're the only faith-based group doing election protection, working with everybody else. So if you want to get on the ground or on the phone in those key states, I'll tell you North Carolina is one of those key states. That's a venue that I want to invite you all to explore. Second is the venue, as Jacqui was suggesting, of your churches. Most of us here are white people. We are either in white churches or no white churches or a family and friends of white churches. And Brittany Packnett once said, if you want to join me in Black Lives Matter on the ground, that's fine. Rubber bullets, tear gas, you may survive. Then you can say, I was there. The bigger risk for you white people, she said, is talking to your own people. Friends and family and congregations and your pastors. The venue has to be. A reporter called me this morning and said, the media is only reporting this white Christian nationalism stuff. They're not reporting what any of you are doing in terms of the movement against it. Right. We've got to make the white churches a venue for us in the next 5 months. Speak it in white churches. The third venue I got from Jacqui yesterday, social media. Social media is something you all can do. And how do we figure out how to use polling places to protect people, the white churches as the venue for gospel telling, and truth-telling and social media, which all of us can do to get the word out. Let's create an algorithm for resistance to white Christian nationalism.
Excellent, Jim. Thank you. Woo!
Yes.
Here comes Obery.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Jacqui. Jacqui said we're involved in a group together, but you must know what she's doing what Jacqui's doing in New York City at her church is exemplary, and it is a model for the kinds of multicultural radicality that we must have. Look her up, Middle Collegiate Church in New York City. I want to pick up with a couple things that Jim just said that I think are great. One thing, Barbara Williams Skinner, I've known her for a while too, and she's a prayer warrior. But I have to let you know that I am, I'd say, a love warrior, but with an emphasis on warrior, because we are in a war here, and it's important for us to keep that in mind. This is a war for the survival of democracy and for the physical and ontological survival of so many of us. I'm frightened to death of what this country will look like when my 7-year-old great-granddaughter in 20 years from now, what it'll look like in her life. We must think about this. What if we don't stop this evil onslaught, what is going to do to all of us? But also, in Jim's second point, I think it speaks to what what my emphasis is on, and that is countering the evil narratives and discourse that have so many people fooled, and or giving so many people comfort and protection, so they can hide behind and do their evil. We have to, in the church, reclaim who we are. And we have to remember, and I've said it, you all have heard me say it for the last 2 days over and over. It is about our commandment on the social level. The primary, what Jesus said, the main social one is love your neighbor as yourself, which means and which implies also struggling for our neighbors to have the same freedoms, the same liberation that we want for ourselves. We have to counter their white Christian nationalist narratives by speaking out against white supremacy, but also more fundamentally, we must reclaim what the gospel is and what it should be about, because they are controlling the discursive terrain now. We hear more about Christian nationalists, and that's very important. So when you couple that with the kind of on-the-ground stuff that Jim is talking about and Jim is doing, and then on top of that, working to counter these evil narratives, then we can really make a difference, because many of these people they have evil intention. We know that. But there are many of them who are they're sincerely wrong, meaning that they're wrong as hell, but they just don't know any better. Why? Because we have not countered what they hear. So they think that literally the books about Donald Trump being a Messiah, being the Son of Man, there are books called that. Why
What in the world?
Why aren't we even? Why do they not know?
Take your time.
That this is a moral degenerate who's cheated people all his life, who's been charged with rape over and over, pedophilia, who's done all kinds of terrible things. Why? Because we're not countering it. And we have to call this movement what it is. It is anti-Christian. And I would call it Christo-fascism, because and Jim talks about that in his book very well. It is fascism. It is looking to destroy all of our rights and make us all genuflect at the altar of their hatefulness. And so the way we, pardon me, I've been talking for the last couple of days. I'm losing my voice. So the way that we must counter it, from my perspective, and what I'm doing is counter the narrative, speak up, reclaim, and know what the heck we're talking about. And I'm talking to you Christians now. Don't just listen to the preacher on Sunday. Read your Bible and other books. Study. Know what it's about. Because if we really knew what our faith was about, there's no way in hell we could allow this to happen. We should be mad as hell.
Thank you, Obery. I am. Thank you, Obery. David, what do you think in there?
I wrote down 3 things. One was to try to persuade the persuadables. And again, this is, you noted, Jacqui, I still have access to semi-conservative, every so often, white church spaces and communities. And all fall, I'll be in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan, and I'll be in in Missouri, and places where predominantly white churches have asked me to come and talk about where are we. And I think I'm essentially saying the same thing. A dangerous and damaged version of Christianity has taken up residence among many of our neighbors who claim to be fellow Christians, and it needs to be countered directly through appeal to the teachings of Jesus, the way of Jesus, and the better version of Christianity that we know. And that when Christians have been seduced away from the way of Jesus, it ought to be possible to at least call some of them back.
Amen.
So persuade the persuadables in church settings. That's a lot of what I'm doing. Trying. Secondly, we have to win elections when possible. In 2022, it looked pretty dire, but a lot of the ultra-Trumpist candidates lost all over the country, including in swing states. They do not have a majority anywhere. If you can mobilize people to vote, then maybe 2022 can be repeated in 2024 at the national level and at the state level. And so all the voter mobilization and getting undecided people to vote and helping people, all of that is essential. And here's the third thing. I think we need to prepare ourselves for what happens if the worst happens. And in 2025, we're under Republican rule across the board. House, Senate, White House, many states. Supreme Court already there. There comes a place where you've lost temporarily the democratic political struggle. And then what does resistance look like? What does faithfulness look like? Here I want to say that the African American tradition in the United States knows for 400 years what it is to labor against all odds. And to not have much hope that it's going to be better in a year or two. But you keep the faith and you fight for justice anyway. Yeah. In other words, these radical, dissenting, resisting traditions, when all looks bleak, and a spirituality that undergirds a long-term resistance, I want us to be prepared for that too. That's maybe what's next, and that will require different things of us in some ways. We need to be ready for that.
That's beautiful, David. Thank you. Thank you. I had the great privilege of convening this panel. David and I went to Israel when we were children, about 15 years ago together. Obery and I went to seminary together when we were children, and I've known Jim for a very long time in this space of activism. I want to just point out what you witnessed up here from my colleagues is intellect plus passion. Intellect plus passion plus faith. Intellect plus passion plus faith plus hope. This is where we need to find our own voice at this moment in time. Your voice, your particular voice. You are the only one in the context where you work. You are the only person who knows what you know, who's experienced what you've experienced, who has access to the people you have access to. And there are no time, my friend Yvette Flunder would say, for closet prophets. For Linda Sarsour would say, people sitting by the wayside. We don't. My spiritual would say, ain't got time to die, meaning ain't got time to act like we're dead, meaning ain't got time to act like this isn't urgent, meaning we only have time to mobilize every resource at our fingertips to do something about this right now, and then to be ready to do the next thing. And that is no less than reclaiming and reframing Christian. That's how we talk about it at Middle Church. I'm going to say middlechurch.org, a place to find resources for how to have these conversations, for how to preach these texts for how to wrestle, okay? So middlechurch.org will be a place for you to find resources. I want to give you a couple of minutes to ask questions, and then I'm going to close us up with a call to action, because as Jim said, this is an altar call. So we've got a mic. It looks like we did good, y'all. Y'all are impressive. It's 12:36. 10 minutes. Do not preach your question, because then it won't get asked. One question for each of the panelists from one of each of you. 1, 2. You ready to go? Directed toward one panelist. Don't answer the question, everybody, because that's not going to be any fun. So pick a person. It can be me. Yeah. Wait, it's not on yet. Hang on 1 second. 1 second. Are y'all good? Was this hot? Aren't they smart? Woo!
Y'all ready?
Yeah, ready to go.
How have African American people been seduced to the other side, and how do we bring them back?
African American people are people. That's how they've been seduced to the other side. People have needs, they have desires, they have wants, they have disappointments, they have egos, and they're fleshy, like we're fleshy, you know? So all the people are fleshy and have carnality and can be seduced to believe that this is God's plan. And that's why the history, the story, this stuff ain't new. When you teach people that people were seduced to the other side at the Civil War. So just human fleshiness, right? And I don't think the black people are not susceptible. And the way we get them back is the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the brown, Afro-Semitic, outsider, marginalized, homeless person who taught us what the real gospel is. Yeah, thank you, baby. Okay, yes, love.
I don't know who.
Pick a person. Just call on
All right,
somebody.
I'll ask Jim.
Okay.
How do we, as a pastor of a purple O&A church in a very red part of Pennsylvania, how do I protect the people in my life who need to be protected, meaning my queer and multi-ethnic friends, while also, what risks do we take while protecting others? How do we do that?
I was in a conversation. Oh, you here?
Yep.
At Candler Theological Seminary with a bunch of young black pastors from all over the South and a lot of young white pastors.
Jim, pick your voice up. Use that preacher voice, hon.
Okay.
Yeah.
A gathering at Candler Seminary with a bunch of black pastors from all over the South and white pastors. And we talked about what we're talking about here, the truth-telling about racism. I saw the black pastors pleading with their white brothers and sisters to tell the truth about all this, just like Jacqui's saying. Most of them would have had Black Lives Matter signs on their front lawns. They didn't disagree, but they were being pleaded with to tell the truth. And the word that describes the response of the white, progressive, mainline liberal pastors, I would say, in response to truth, was risk. Risk. I could lose my parsonage, which I need for my kids. I could lose my pension, my members, my job. I'm hearing pastors getting death threats from congregants. It's time to tell the truth because, as Jesus said, you'll know the truth and the truth will make you free, meaning the opposite of truth is not lies but captivity. And a whole lot of white churches are in captivity. And if you're pastoral, not just prophetic, you want to free your people from captivity. And yes, there will be risk. Take it, do it. And don't do it in the cancel culture way, you're right, I'm wrong. Do it from the text, from the Gospels, and make it about the decision. We're facing a decision in several months, and don't worry, I would suggest us here about who's going to be our candidates. We can't control that. That's another conversation, very frustrating. We're facing a decision, no matter who the candidates are from the Democratic side, about what kind of nation, what kind of people, what kind of constitution, what kind of democracy we're going to be. That's a decision the French just saw and made for themselves. We've got to look back to history and make that kind of decision right now. Because as has been said, you've got to figure out who you can persuade. And a lot of us are going to be in all those states around the fall trying to persuade people. We got to coordinate our road trips, David, all over the place.
Yeah.
but also who you must defeat. I don't mean violently, but I mean at the ballot box. Who you can persuade and who we must defeat in the next several months.
That's great, Jim. And just to add a tag on that, and who we must defend. Who we must center, just based on your question. That's beautiful. We got another question coming from Obery, right here, in the striped, beautiful blue. And then we're coming to you, Presbyterian brother. Okay.
I'm thinking about the white commitment to politeness. And what do we do about that?
And I'd like to speak to that.
Good, Obery, go.
You know, because that's part of the problem. Martin Luther King, you know, articulated that a while ago. But it's also a theological question because, you know, people must not be reading the Gospel of Mark, in which Jesus got angry over and over again. Must not be paying attention to the cleansing of the temple, in which he went into the to the central institution of Israel with an exploitive and oppressive religious hierarchy. Well, it was religio-political hierarchy. And he called them out. And then in Matthew 23, what did he call them? A brood of vipers and all of that?
Aramaic cussing.
He went into the temple and he stood up, like, as we said in the street when I was growing up, stood in the temple like a natural man.
Yeah.
And he told them what they were about. You know, so this white politeness is nothing but a cop-out. Because what it really says is that we really aren't invested in this unless it hurts us. If you believe in the gospel, you'll kick who's ever asked you have to kick to get them out of the way.
My friend Obery Hendricks, love warrior, martial artist, theologian. Okay. A question for David. Right here, my brother. Yeah.
I was afraid Obery would hold something back, so I feel good. David, and we're all, as Democrats and others, all torn up over which candidate we'll have. My question is this. Regardless of which candidate we may end up with, what do we need to do differently anyhow?
That's good.
What do we need to do that we're not doing? Now, I'm hearing seeds of that now, but what would we wish to see done differently?
Here's something that I would say, and that I bet everybody on this panel would agree. Democrats are woefully bad at articulating the moral, ethical, religious, spiritual reasons for the policies that they support.
Amen.
Maybe so as not to offend the non-religious. They don't draw the connection. Why do we care about health care for all? Why do we care about civil rights for all? Has something to do with the intrinsic dignity of the human being, made in the image of God, sacred in God's sight, and that government, one of its fundamental roles is to guarantee a society in which that is respected. Ultimately, those values are transcendent values.
Yes.
If Democrats and generally progressives are unwilling to name the faith basis, it leaves the field open for charlatans to name a faith basis for, how about expelling 15 million people, or rolling back civil rights, or rolling back environmental protections. The field is wide open, big enough to drive a truck through. Tell the values, reasons why we vote for who we vote for, and why we value what we value. And so I think whoever the candidates are, and some of the candidates are actually very good at that.
Yes.
But at the national level, it hasn't been very good recently. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David. All right. Is that one more question? Let's get way back there to the hat. And that's our last question. Did you have one? Okay, let me do this. Let me hear this question and see if we can wrap it up into one. Does that sound good? Because we're at 5 minutes. Okay.
So anyone, but I'll go with Jacqui.
Okay.
Very practical question.
Yeah.
For those of us in churches, resources, studies that we can offer to people who know little or nothing about the subject. And the key for me here is little or nothing, because I don't want something that's a bridge too far.
Yeah, excellent question. I'm going to go quickly on that to say, right now I see Yale, I see PBS. You Google, that's what I saw that resonated with me, sir, with your question about don't know nothing. I thought Yale did a really good job of putting together some history and some story. I thought PBS did a really good job. And there's a documentary out called Bad Faith. Badass. That is badass. And people cannot miss it. It's very clear, lots of different diverse voices. Okay? 3 things. One more question, right here. My videographer. Go ahead, sir. And I'm going to wrap us up.
This is for David. Can you talk about the relationship between Christian nationalism and Christian Zionism?
Ooh, okay.
The question was the relationship between Christian nationalism and Christian Zionism. It's a lot of it's a lot of the same people. I would say let's say an authoritarian, religiously based ideology in which the nation belongs to only a subset of the people who live there, and just about anything can be done to the people who don't count. And so the way that American fundamentalists and dispensationalists have supported Christian Zionism is a big part of the story as to how the Israeli government has taken the wrong turns that it has taken, especially under Netanyahu's leadership or misleadership. But the idea, religious nationalism at its worst says, in the name of God, we claim that this nation and its land and so on belongs only to some. And everybody else, we can trample and do whatever we want to them. And that is, I think, the commonality. And it is one of our worst exports, Christian Zionism, one of our worst exports. And now it is at work here in its own form, I would say, in this country.
That's a beautiful answer, David. Thank you. I want to wrap us. I want to wrap us with an altar call, but first to thank my colleagues. Get Obery Hendricks' book, The Politics of Jesus, and then and then when you get through, get this one. Okay? Get David's book. Get his book. Get Jim's book. Read these books. Another thing you can do is a book study. I didn't say it. They said it. Okay? So open up those kinds of doors. And here's my altar call to you. I am an African-American woman who is 65 years old, who've grown up in the context, in the shadow of waves of white supremacist ideologies masquerading as Christians. This ain't new, but I'm done with it. I'm on the nice white people tour often, though I lead a multi-ethnic church, telling white people as kindly as I can, get it together and get in the game. Because even though this nation's going to be browner than it is now in 2050, you still have the power. Say, I have the power. Do not shrink from your power. You have the power of your pulpit, the power of your influence, the power of your circle. You have the power of your words. You have the power of what you second and third on social media. You have the power of what you're silent about. Because you are white. And the white Christian nationalists, what I'm trying to say is you pass. Did you hear what I said? They don't know where you're coming from. You can be stealth. Tell your uncle, your grandmother, the truth of who Jesus is. Don't whiten Jesus up when you're telling them the truth. Let him be the outsider he is, the Palestinian Jew he is, the brown Afro-Asiatic person he is. Read Cain Hope Felder as a black man. Read Curtis DeYoung as a white man. Pick a book to help people to understand that this religion was founded by a black person. How dare we not understand the implications for that, okay? So I'm calling you, stand up, I'm wrapping up. This is an altar call. I want you to make a pledge. Are you ready? Put your hand on your heart. I pledge allegiance to Jesus of Nazareth, an outsider, marginalized. I place to center him. I place to center those on the margins. I pledge to use all of my power to dismantle evil ideologies, no matter what they're called, so we can be free. Be free. Be free. Hallelujah. Amen. Thank you, panel. Thank you, panel.